Hello everyone, and today I'll be showing you how to use Reality Capture PPI for cheap. So let's start with importing on photos. I'm importing them at the full resolution that they came in, just to see kind of how much it's going to cost, just at first. Let's run a quick alignment. I typically have my alignment image downscale factor at 3. And I put it to low so that I use the entirety of the images themselves. And once these are calculated, we'll also be able to see the price that our entire image data set will cost. So I captured these images with a Sony Alpha A7R II. That is a 42 megapixel DSLR. That's a lot. That's a big sensor, and so that produces like an 8K by 5K display, an 8K by 5K image. And so I'm expecting, let's see, there's 67 images at 42 megapixels. That's probably not going to be that cheap for, kind of a small scan. Let's see if it's already calculated. It did. Okay, so it's $7.85. You see it over here. So if you click on this guy, you'll see it. I mean, for a thing like this, it's not that bad. If I really do want it at full resolution, and by full resolution, I mean when you reconstruct the photogrammetry, if you use the entirety of the image, so let's open up the settings here. That's reconstruction settings. And if I look at the normal downscale, so if I put this into 1, which means if it uses the entirety of the image, at full resolution and to reconstruct the depth maps and to reconstruct the mesh, then it's going to cost me that much money. So how can I make this cheaper? Let's see. So let's make a new project. Let's not save it. These are my images again. So you're going to download something called Infranview. So that's one way to doing it. Basically, we need to find a way of downscaling the images. That's the main thing. So if you go, I'll link this here. If you go to infranview.com, I'll have it in the description. You can just download this for free. And when you do, come back here. From Infranview, go to batch conversion / rename. You can also press B. So if you open this up, the worst thing about this app really is the horrible, like old Windows Explorer style. So you can't really like copy paste your address, your directory into here. So you kind of have to do it manually. So go to San Francisco. This is where those were taken. So these are all my images, and you can just add all. So now all these images are in this batch. Then the other thing you have to do is go to advanced settings. So yours might be a little bit different. Basically, pause this video and just take a look at what I have and turn off anything that you don't need. I only have resize turned on, and basically, yeah, no crop, just resizing and downscaling down to 25%. So 25% of 42 megapixels is like 10.5%, or 10.5 megapixel. So that's like a smartphone size photo, which is good. Let's see how much that's going to cost. Leave preserve aspect ratio on, so it's proportionally downscaling, and use resample function, better quality. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So let's say okay. And here, basically, the output folder results file. So this is where you want your output stuff to be. If you use current lookin folder, it'll basically use the directory of where your images are. And I'm just going to add downscale at the end here. So it creates a folder in here called downscale. So let's say start batch. All right, it's taking its time because these are large images. And let's cut forward. All right, so now it's done. 0 errors, 0 warnings. Wonderful. Let's just exit batch. Let's make sure it's in here. This is the image. All right. Yeah, in fact, if you zoom in, you'll kind of view actual size. So that's the actual size. If we go to the original image and take a look, view actual size. Oh, nice. Okay, so the cool thing, what we're going to actually do here, and this is new to Reality Capture's latest version. The most interesting thing well, not that interesting. Basically, they've added a way of being able to use low res images for reconstruction, and also sometimes if you want to open up shadows, bring down highlights, basically things to help your mesh reconstruction, you can now use two different data sets, two different images for the reconstruction and one for texturing. So what I want to do is use this for reconstruction. So we call this geometry, and we're going to make another folder and we're going to call it texture. So instead of underscore, you could use exclamation mark, and I think, or you can also use an @ symbol. So basically now Reality Capture has a layers, image layers. So geometry, texture, you can even have multiple texture files. And if you drag them in together, it's actually not going to count twice as many images. If they're named exactly like this, the folders, geometry and texture, it'll use whatever is in geometry for mesh reconstruction and as well as alignment, and then it'll use whatever is in texture just for texturing. So this, you could actually even change the colors, you know, like have it really be, like if you want to do some color mapping, this is where you'd want to do it. So notice this is actually also the higher resolution images, because I want my texture to be as high res as possible, but I also don't want to pay that much. So that's why the mesh reconstruction geometry images are lower res. You don't have to do it this way. You could just stick to your downsampled images. It'll, you know, you don't have to do it this way at all, but this is just something new. So notice here, it says images 67, it says 67 images, right? And even though we dragged in twice as many images. So that's good. It's basically, it worked. The other way you can also check is if you drag one of the images in here, and if you press Shift Tab, it switches to the other layer. You see that? Shift Tab, Shift Tab, Shift Tab, Shift Tab. So it's basically switching between this input layer, geometry, texture, geometry. So that's fine. Previously, before they had this, you had to trick Reality Capture. If you wanted to use a different different images for texturing, like better colored images for texturing, you had to kind of like add, like you basically had to change the directory of where the images were, so that when you closed and reopened Reality Capture, it asked you to relink the images, and then you relinked it to your new images. That's what I've had to do for the last couple of years. But now Reality Capture has image layers, and that's great. So actually, look at that. So the new price of this data set is $50. $50. We went from, what was it, $7 to half a dollar. That's very cheap. I do also want to see how, you know, like what's going to be the difference in quality. So wait till the end of the video and we'll get to that. I'll basically do a comparison between the two things. What do I want? I'm trying to now make sure the everything is straightened out, because sometimes Reality Capture just arbitrarily chooses how to orient things. So let's go to reconstruction, set ground plane. So this is to move everything around. We'll pull it up, and then this way. This is also going to help if I go into ortho view. So if we go like, that's not right. Let's go like right. Nope. Let's go front. There we go. So now we're, instead of perspective, we're in an orthogonal view. So all the edges are straight. So that looks nice. Let's go front or right. Hard to tell, but we'll go with it. So now to go back to ortho view, you have to scroll up to perspective. All right. So after I resize things, I like to make a new reconstruction box so that it's perfectly aligned with the data set. Let's pull it back a little bit, pull this down a bit. Actually, now I'm also seeing that it's slightly tilted, I think, but no, it's not a problem. We're going to end up cropping the borders anyway, and I'll show you guys how to do that in the video by the end of the video. So let's keep going. Actually, maybe that'll be a different video. Yeah, let's do that. We'll do cropping in secondary video. So, I forgot to do something. Let's abort. Let's go to reconstruction settings. Okay, so it was right. I wanted to see what my downscale was because I want to use the full resolution of the already downsampled images in geometry. So it's good I left it at 1. I don't need those. I just like to have them open. Okay, so let's do reconstruction, and I'll see you in a second. Before you go, actually, if you don't already have your layout like this, if you want to do that, basically up here, there's different layouts you can do. The one I typically use is this 3 one. So one I leave in 2D to look at the images, where you could just drag in an image and take a look. And down here, I change it to console. So this actually gives you more information about what's going on. So right now it's calculating depth maps, which basically means it takes a stereo pair of images that have like similar features, and then I guess using like a discrepancy map, or basically it tries to understand what the difference between those two images are, and then creates a depth map from that. And typically like depth maps look like let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it looks like a black and white photo that things in the front are either, things in the foreground are either fully black, or things in the back are fully white. Sometimes it's the inverse. Basically, let's see if we can look at a photogrammetry. Photogrammetry depth map. Sure, something like that. Something like this. That's what it's doing right now. It's generating a depth map for every stereo pair, and then it fuses the depth maps together and then creates a 3D mesh. It's pretty cool. So this is mesh room that it's showing. But no matter. Let it do its thing. Come back to me in a second. All right, so the reconstruction is complete, and it has produced a 7.7 million triangle model. So I also went ahead and did a full reconstruction. So this is using the full scale image. However, this time with downscale 2 for depth map. So let's take a look at that. I almost always use downscale 2 for pretty much every data set, except, I mean, even for iPhone data sets, like even for smartphone images, which are 12 megapixels anyway, most of the time I'm using 12 or 2, downscale of 2, because downscale 1 will just take like that much longer. It's not a multiple, it's like orders of magnitude longer. So with 42 megapixels, I always use 2. Even with drone images at 24 megapixels, use downscale 2. So this, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, you can see some differences. So let's zoom in here. Yeah, that's where I'm starting to see the difference. Let's look at the an actual model that we will be using. So I always, you always decimate from the high poly model down to something that's usable, like something like 100K triangles or 1 million triangles if it's really worth it. Let's go back to downscale. So this is the downscale model at 100K. So I've also textured both models. So let's take a look at the textured. So this is the textured version, and let's switch to the full scale model. This is full scale. This is downscale. Full scale, downscale. So let's zoom in to see a little bit better. Keep in mind, reality capture actually doesn't show you the full resolution in the app. So this is, I don't know what this exactly is, but it's more of a preview, but it's good for comparison's sake between the two. So let's zoom in. I think there's something, when you zoom in, you'll start noticing the real differences with the downscaled version. So here, notice that these two petals are connected versus at full scale, you don't have that because the full resolution mesh had more detail on the original kind of geometry. So having this, having the downscale will produce some worse geometry in certain places. Let's take a look. Maybe here. Yeah, here I'm seeing it as well. So notice that these guys are individually kind of spiking out, whereas here it's much more of a blob. So perhaps for this mesh, it actually matters way less. I mean, this is something I'm just posting on Sketchfab. In fact, this is something I posted on Sketchfab like 2 years ago, but at 1 million triangles. So I was just reprocessing it to have a better optimized version. But yeah, I would recommend downscaling your images for, to save money on certain projects, but also for things that won't particularly need it. Like this is a great example. But if you have a large scale scan that will require a lot of like intricate geometry details, I would recommend not 25%, maybe try 50% downscale. So half of the resolution, and if that's still not good, try 75 or even a full resolution. This is something that Reality Capture has talked about in their forums, even though they have a downscaling feature integrated in this mesh reconstruction, this image downscale, but this doesn't change the price of the thing. So they've talked about this on their forums that if you yourself do the downscaling outside of RC and use those images just for the mesh and reconstruction, then it's going to be cheaper. So I don't think I'm revealing any information that I'm not supposed to, but that's just how it is. Hope this was helpful. If you want something more detailed, if you want I know I kind of went through all the steps without really explaining, what all these things are. If that's confusing to you, if I went too quickly, let me know down below if you want a more detailed kind of walkthrough of Reality Capture. And if there's enough requests, I'd be happy to do it. Oh, and before I leave, so notice I haven't paid anything yet. So you can use the entire app for free without even having to pay it. Just basically you can do your test to see, how things look. Even if you want to, maximize as much downscaling as you can before paying, you can just have multiple versions running at the same time. So that's really nice. And then once you're done, basically if you go to mesh export and you pick somewhere, let's say here, first, it basically does this, and then it's like, and you put in your PIN code here, and you confirm payment. So I'm not going to do it for this, but I will do it for this. Let's try that. Yes, $50. So I have if you don't have a Reality Capture account, so you first need to do that on the Reality Capture website. You have to make an account and then putting your payment information and then buy credits there. And then once you have those credits, you can use them. So let's do that. Oh my, that was the wrong pin. Just kidding. There we go. Excellent. And export. Ta-da. So now I'm happy with the results. I own this mesh. I own these images and this project forever. I can even share this project to you guys, but I'm not going to do that. Not for any particular reason. But in the future, if there's something that you guys would want to have or that makes sense to share out, I definitely can because of PPI. And you guys can export things. All right, great. Bye.